politics which doesn't like dialogue for a start. Even in the first Cold War, it was, you mentioned the Cuban Missile Crisis or the diplomatic relations. At the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Dobrynin, who was the Soviet ambassador in Washington, was meeting Robert Kennedy, and this was normal. Second Cold War, it's worse than the first. Because this idea, even our discussion today, will get a lot of criticism. The fact is that, how can you talk to Russians today? So Cold War is a style of politics which doesn't engage with dialogue. I mean, as I said, the second Cold War is intensification. It's the vilification of the enemy. It's no longer communism versus capitalism, but they talk of autocracy versus democracy. But the logic is the same. A sort of division of the world into the dark and the light, good and bad, good and evil, and so on. I was skeptical about in using the word Cold War because it misapplies it. It suggests it's a continuation of the first Cold War. But if we talk about it as a style of politics, then it makes sense.
I think that this first Cold War that ended basically in late 70s or early 80s, we can say, was based on ideology, as you say, communist and or socialist and capitalist, and contradictions were absolutely absolute, I would say. They cannot be, there is no reciprocity in it. Now we do not have this contradiction. We are building capitalism ourselves. It is in Russia, it is based, probably it has more state influence than in the other countries. And of course, this label of authoritarianism, it is not applicable to us. It is also a way of democracy. Democracy has many faces. In my view, the things are not that bad as during the first phase of the Cold War, because we still have common interests. People now is different. People will not accept in Europe as well as in Russia the real war. What we do have in Ukraine, it's a conflict, as you are saying, between monism and pluralism. That is true. It is much more serious, and it has gone out of all controls. Both Russian and Western control. It is now what we do have in impersonation of Zelensky. It's a figure that he can live only in conditions of this war, because otherwise he will be toppled and he will have to leave. But this is repairable on some conditions. I'm not sure when it will happen. Either it will happen this winter or next summer, or it is, but it's still, goals are clear. And during the Cold War, the idea was a total destruction of each other. So that's, of course.
Under Khrushchev, there was peaceful coexistence, which accepted that you could have different systems working well, not together, but don't necessarily, that war was not inevitable. Today, people are more concerned that we're closer to the Third World War. You're absolutely right. There's many common interests, not just nuclear disarmament, biological and chemical weapons, and environmental issues. There's so much common challenges between Russia and the political countries of the West, but there's no dialogue. That's why I say it's worse than the First Cold War. In the Second Cold War, dialogue has completely gone. At the end of the First Cold War,